We are very excited to be here. Obviously, an honor for us to take over the majority again in the Minnesota House and bring some balance back to St. Paul. Republicans are ready to get to work on the issues that Minnesotans care about. We're excited to work with anybody and everybody who wants to work with us, and we look forward to a really productive couple of years. Today we're going to roll out our first 5 bills that represent the priorities that we feel Minnesotans care about. I want to just mention to everybody that we think this really is a starting point. I've been very open in saying that one of my frustrations about the way that the legislature works is that at the beginning of session, we show up and introduce solutions in bill format, and then we spend the next 5 months trying to convince everybody that our solutions are the answer to their problems. And we don't do a good enough job circling around the problems and really starting with that and then working towards a solution. So I want everybody to know that these bills, while they represent our priority areas, we hope that with input from Minnesotans, from Republicans, from Democrats, from staff, from citizens, that we will make these bills better to really represent, not just better, but the best that they can be, to really deal with these issues that we know Minnesotans care about. So we really want to make sure that we're prioritizing the issues that Minnesotans care about. And as I said in my speech the other day, we want citizens to really drive the agenda here at the Capitol. And let those issues that they care about be our central focus. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joyce, and she'll introduce our issue areas.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues who have worked so hard on putting together these first 5 pieces of legislation. These first bills really encompass the priorities of hardworking Minnesotans across the state, and they also encompass our priorities as the majority. We intend to work together with Minnesotans to ensure that their kids get the best quality of education, the education that they deserve, that their loved ones are getting the quality care that they need and deserve, that their roads and bridges are safe and convenient throughout the state, and that they have the opportunity to take good paying jobs right here in our great state. So today we're excited to announce our legislative priorities and start the discussion in our communities and in our committees. We're happy to announce that Representative Kresha will be authoring House File 1 to grow better paying jobs. Representative Loon will be authoring House File 2 that aims to give every child a world-class education. Representative Schumacher is author of House File 3 that works to protect aging adults and their quality of life. Representative Kelly is author of House File 4 that refocuses our transportation dollars on roads and bridges. And Representative Mack is author of House File 5 with the goal of ensuring fair access and affordability in health care. Thank you, and we'll take questions. We'll start with, we'll go through have each of the bill authors talk. We'll start with Representative Kresha in House File 1.
Well, thank you, and I'll give a brief overview. Thank you for coming and giving us an opportunity. So House File 1 really is a culmination of what we've heard out in our communities, and that starts with a new markets tax credit, a new markets investment for mining, manufacturing, timber, and high tech. This really extends out to all corners of the state, and it really is a new program. So it's not about rehashing old ideas. We're also going to do a pass-through tax credit proposal for S corps, and we have some R&D, and we also are going to tie in a couple rule changes, such as we're going to recommend that we go from 45 to 90 days for MPC and the DNR, that we can move some of these permitting processes a lot quicker to help our workforce and to help our job growth and our entrepreneurs. So there's a whole bunch of other things. We have a lot of people that are working on this bill. It's a fantastic bill that I think is really going to impact the state, and I'm excited to work on it and work it through the committee process.
Representative Loon will discuss House File 2, our education bill.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be the author of a bill to help set us on the pathway that I think will unite us in working with the governor in bringing what he has characterized a really good education to a great education for all the students in Minnesota. It's vitally important that we are on a system of continuous improvement, and we know that next to parent involvement, the most important factor in the success of the education of our children is quality teaching. 4 years ago, the legislature with the governor put in place a requirement that all schools evaluate their teachers every year. And this is important with regards to mentoring teachers, providing effective professional development, and making sure that we're providing the best possible teaching for all of our kids. We're going to take that evaluation system and say that if the schools are in the difficult situation of having to make a reduction or changes in their teaching force, those evaluations, which measure teacher performance, will be part of the process. Other locally developed criteria will also be used, and again, these evaluation systems and processes have been created locally at each school district, but they must be part of that process. Again, every kid deserves a quality teacher. They need it, parents expect it, and that's going to be a big part of some of the work we'll do. We are also going to work on making sure that we're streamlining processes to license quality teachers in the state of Minnesota. We're going to ask the Board of Teaching to promulgate rules by January 1st of 2016 for some of the ways in which teachers from out of state can come in and be licensed if they can demonstrate that they are quality, effective professionals. We're also going to give a little more flexibility to school districts to bring in local community experts to provide vocational, career, and technical classes within their schools. That's something that we are hearing, especially in some of our rural areas, that they really need to do in their schools, and accessing those experts in a little less paperwork intensive process will be important. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Representative Schumacher is going to talk about House File 3 that works to protect adults who are aging and their quality of life.
Good morning. House File 3 has two objectives that we're trying to accomplish. The first part works with our workforce and trying to make careers out of things that people see as jobs today, working in nursing homes and long-term care settings. We know that if people stay in that care providing situation long enough, that adds continuity to the care that our seniors get. And so instead of having this revolving door of employees around, we want to make sure that people are getting the best care and having familiar faces taking care of them throughout their time in a long-term care setting. And so the first three things that we are trying to do in House File 3 address that. The first is to offer a loan forgiveness program to people who are in more of the med tech type careers, and including dental and lab tech and x-ray tech, so that as long as they work in a long-term care facility after they get their schooling, that they have an expanded opportunity to see loan forgiveness. The second part of this is to expand the scholarship program that nursing facilities are offered from their employees who are working as a CNA to become an RN, and to keep people in those facilities and working towards higher degrees so they can provide better quality care. We want to expand the scholarship programs for that. Those scholarship programs, by the way, also help to cover the cost for daycare and mileage to get this education. We're also lowering the amount of time that's required to be actually working so that they can focus on their education and still get the skill set that they need. And so we'll be working on that as well. The third part of the workforce effort is to have DEED make long-term care priority in their workforce solutions and really focus on that and identify its needs areas and skill set areas that we can really expand on and work on into the future. And so we really want to propel that out. The second part of House File 3 is to give Minnesotans a long-term plan for long-term care and allow for people to save their own money and spend their own money and have their own choices in long-term care. And so the first part of that will be an establishment of a long-term care savings account. And the idea behind that is a lot like a health savings account or an IRA, where people can put money away with some tax benefit in order to have money available to them for long-term care costs down the road, so that they're not having to rely on the state or having to spend down in order to go on to Medicaid to get the care that they need. The second part of that is to take away and offer a credit to those who have long-term care costs but haven't reached the age of retirement yet. And currently, if they do an early withdrawal from their IRA system and receive a penalty for that, if there's paying long-term care expenses with that money, they have to pay the penalty on top of that. We want to offer a tax credit in order to offset the costs of that tax penalty so that people are able to use their own money to make their own decisions and have their own choices with that. And that will be the culmination of House File 3.
Thank you, Representative Schumacher. Representative Kelly will be carrying House File 4, which focuses on the Minnesotans' priority for roads and bridges.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank all of you for being here and allowing us to discuss our priorities for the upcoming session. As Speaker Daudt said, the priorities that we feel are what Minnesota needs and Minnesotans desire. I think many of you throughout the campaign trail covered this transportation. It almost became cliche to say just roads and bridges, and everybody kind of understood that what we need to do is just reinvest in our infrastructure and our roads and bridges. So we're very proud that House File 4 will show that we can do that by a number of items. First and foremost, just a 15% efficiency across the department. Now, this is something that Commissioner Zelli, along with the Governor's Task Force, has suggested. So we're simply affirming that goal and putting that in legislation. Secondly, the funding is the issue, and I think as you look at House File 4, you'll see that what we can do without raising taxes is fund transportation to the tune of $750 million. And we can do that by a couple of things. We have unreserved funds in 16 and 17 of approximately $230 million. The 18 and 19 years, another $280 million. So we've got $500 million right there within the department that we can use. Secondly, 33 states across the nation allow their legislators to come in and actually prioritize spending. So we're suggesting approximately $200 million to go to transportation and direct that to local roads and bridges. So we're very excited about this opportunity to make transportation a priority, and we'll look forward to your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kelly. Representative Tara Mack is the author of House File 5 with the goal of ensuring fair access and affordable health care. Representative Mack.
Good morning. House File 5, that you will see details coming out later today as we introduce it, involves some issues that will be addressing concerns that we have long been raising with MNsure. The main components of this are going to be a few items that deal with bringing MNsure more in line with what we expect of other state departments. At the inception of MNsure, it was created as a super agency that was exempt from many of the other requirements that other departments are expected to deliver on. And so we are simply trying to bring it more in line with what we think departments and agencies should be accountable with to the legislature. The other big piece that it will outline is that we are going to request a federal waiver that would allow people in Minnesota to have access to the tax subsidies outside of MNsure. Regardless of where they want to buy their health insurance, they would have access to the tax subsidies that the federal government has made available. So that will be a request moving forward to the federal government. We think that that will give people the access that they deserve without having to go through some of the hassles and hoops of MNsure. Our goal, of course, being that everybody has equal and good access to good quality health care, including keeping their own doctors and getting the best price available to them and their families. This will be a work in progress. We are anxious to have many discussions and hearings on MNsure to figure out the best way to move forward for all Minnesotans and the quality health care that they've come to expect and deserve in Minnesota. Thank you.
So with that, we're very proud of the work we've put in thus far, but we really want to engage Minnesotans and everyone in helping us to make sure that we're addressing the problems that Minnesotans care about. Our commitment, obviously, in these first 5 bills is, number one, to grow additional better-paying jobs for all Minnesotans. We want to make sure that every child receives the world-class education that they deserve. We want to protect our aging adults' quality of life. Refocus our transportation dollars on roads and bridges, and we want to ensure that every Minnesotan has fair access to affordable, quality health care. So with that, we thank you for your time, and we will certainly stand for some questions about these first 5 pieces of legislation.
How much will this cost, and where are you getting the money?
That is a good question. The the transportation bill has a cost of about $200 million in it. That money would come in the legislation from the money that will be left on the bottom line at the end of this biennium. The tax bill actually has it's actually $250 million that will be returning to the taxpayers in that bill. So.
Yeah,
money that was referenced by Representative Kelly, $750 million of accounted for unspent funds. Are those within MnDOT's budget right now, or where does that money come from?
Sure, I'll let him address that.
Thank you. Yes, those funds are unreserved balances that are there now, excuse me, and as projected to go forward into 16, 17, and 18, 19.
And then draining that unreserved funds down, does that in any way affect the ability to issue bonds, the credit rating on the highway bonds that MnDOT issues?
No, it doesn't. What we're suggesting is a 90% spend down, and those funds come from possible bids that came in under bid, reduction in interest rates on debt structuring. So those funds are there because of possible projects that just didn't get done within this 2-year allotment program.
Mr. Speaker, how do you think this dovetails? Senate DFL just rolled out their agenda and big focus on Greater Minnesota and some really big ideas like free VOTEC school, free kindergarten. How does that seem to align with you?
Well, you know, we look forward to working with them. Obviously, I haven't had a lot of time to look into their, we were in caucus here for the last hour while they were rolling out their priorities. I did get a chance to just see the top line of what they're proposing. You know, we certainly look forward to working with them on the issues that Minnesotans care about. And I actually, when I look at their bills, see some areas where we probably will work well together. So I look forward to the next couple of years. I think it's a time where we really can put our focus on Minnesotans and not just Minnesotans in Minneapolis or St. Paul or Greater Minnesota, but all Minnesotans, and really solving the problems that Minnesotans care about.
What about that Greater Minnesota focus? I asked him, you know, if he could get the punch for his first 3 bills being so Greater Minnesota focused.
I have a feeling that with the election results of the last election, everybody's going to have a focus on Greater Minnesota. But we were very sincere after the election in noting that we felt like the last 2 years, Greater Minnesota really got left behind. And I don't want Minneapolis and St. Paul or the suburbs to feel for the next 2 years like they're left behind. But we do need to understand that the dynamics of the metro area and Greater Minnesota are different. And policies affect those 2 areas very differently. So we want to make sure that we're representing all of Minnesota, and that's our commitment.
Mr. Speaker, your job growth plan relies heavily on tax breaks for businesses, and Senator Bach said earlier that that kind of strategy has been a failure in the past.
Well, you know, I would disagree. I think that just fundamentally, there's a couple of different ways that you can raise revenue for the state of Minnesota. Number one, you can do what the Democrats have done for the last 2 years, which is one of the largest tax increases in state history. And the bottom line is what they've done is taken more money out of the pockets of Minnesota families and out of Minnesota family budgets. And the other way to do it is to grow jobs and to grow wages in Minnesota. We get our revenue for the most part from 2 places, income tax and sales tax. And the recipe to grow revenue for the state of Minnesota that helps and benefits every Minnesotan is to grow those wages and jobs. And if we do that, they'll be making more money, they'll pay more income tax, and they'll have more money in their pocket, and they'll buy more goods and services, which is also good for the economy, and they'll pay more sales tax. That's really the only sustainable way to grow revenue for the state of Minnesota. And that's what we're looking for, is something that not only is sustainable, but benefits all Minnesotans.
How big of a role should teacher evaluations play when schools have to cut staff?
Well, you know, we feel very strongly that, number one, we need to make sure that we have the best quality teachers in our classrooms. That needs to be first and foremost. And we want to give flexibility to local school districts in making sure that they can put the best teachers in front of students. We think that's ultimately the most important factor in deciding whether a child gets a great education or not. So that will be a big focus of ours. And I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to add anything on to what I've said.
Well, just briefly, if you ask parents, you know, what's the most important thing, do you want to know that the teacher that your child has is highly effective and qualified, or just that they have more seniority than the other teachers in the building? Every time they'll tell you they want the most qualified, best, most effective teacher. So it should be the number one component. Certainly seniority comes into play when you've got teachers with similar lengths of time or similar evaluations. Seniority needs to be part of that. And this is something where, again, the school districts and their local teachers, union representatives need to sit down and work out these systems. But the teacher evaluation program that's put into place is important, and it's important that we use it for decisions like this.
I will also add, I think it's, that's our priority, putting the best teachers in the classroom. And I think it's very difficult to argue the opposite side of that we don't want to give local school districts the flexibility to keep the best teachers in the classrooms. That's a tough argument to make. And the public really, I think, expects us to give those local school districts that flexibility.
Representative Mack, can you tell us more about the plan to allow people to get federal tax credits for health care even if they don't buy their health insurance through MNsure? Why do you think that's important?
I think in the last 2 years since we've seen MNsure roll out, we have seen people basically have to go through an unnecessary process of going through what has been a very rough rollout of a very complicated, very expensive website. What we're saying is, we're not here to make sure that MNsure can exist for the sake of MNsure. We're here to make sure that Minnesotans have access to quality and affordable health care and the ability to shop. And so we're saying people should have the ability and the right to have access to those tax credits that the federal government has made available, no matter where they buy their insurance from. If they want to go through the broker and the folks that they've always built a relationship throughout the years, they should be able to go there and have access to the tax credits. If they want to go directly to the plans and get an understanding of what's available and what's best for their family, they should have access to that. And so that's what we're trying to get at. We are trying to do the best for Minnesotans, and certainly MNsure can continue to figure out how to navigate the challenges that they have faced, but we don't think we should continually put Minnesotans through that messy process and make them experience the pain. They should have the ability to shop where they want to shop.
Is part of the thinking behind that the fact that those federal tax dollars are also paid by all Minnesotans, not just those who go through MNsure?
Absolutely. That's dollars that every Minnesotan sends to Washington, and Washington has been very nice to offer some of that back to them, and they should have access to that through whatever means they think necessary, and whatever way they can get the best deal for them and their families in what is right now a very challenging healthcare environment.
Representative, have other states been successful in getting that kind of waiver for their citizens?
To my knowledge, not successful at this point. I don't know if there's other states that have gone for a similar thing, but it's new, and so the federal government has not given any concrete responses to this point yet, mostly because it's something that hasn't gotten that far down the pipeline yet.
Will you seek help from Republicans in Congress who now control the House and the Senate there to maybe make some changes at the federal level that might make this?
Absolutely. We will certainly be in communication with them, hoping that pressure can be applied both from their positions in Washington as well as whatever we can do as we're representing our constituents here in Minnesota, and hopefully with a team approach we can make the case that this really is the best thing for the constituents that we serve when it comes to how they're able to shop for their health care and have access to those tax credits.
Representative, has any state applied for this federal waiver yet? And if they have they've been denied, or are we the first?
My understanding is there's 2 other states that have started to move in this direction. I can't tell you off the top of my head the name of those states. I was talking to someone about it last week. But again, to my knowledge, no, it's early in the process for anyone that has started this, so it hasn't been a denial. There also hasn't been acceptance from the federal government.
Is this something the federal government is offering to states? It would seem to be counterproductive for the people who support the new health care law.
I think it's more pressure coming from the states. I don't think it's something the federal government has put out on the table as an option, but states are trying to apply pressure, saying the options you've given us are broken. They're tying the hands of both legislators and citizens of our states. We want better options. We want different options, and this is the best way we think we can go about it.
Would this waiver shift some of the burden of determining, whether someone is eligible for tax credits to brokers and the insurance companies?
We'll have to take a look at that. I've been in touch with some of the folks that would be affected by this. Many of them have the means to do that. There's many private market solutions out there that already have the tools in place to calculate what MNsure has been struggling to calculate and figure out for the past 2 years. So there's tools available out there, and I think we want to look at creative solutions to make this a reality and ultimately a better system for Minnesotans.
Could you go into a little more detail about the other half of the MNsure plan, the reforms to the management?
Sure. There's a couple fairly simple and I think will be bipartisan aspects to it. One of them is it will bring more into compliance MNsure with the minute requirements and IT requirements that all other departments have to abide by. And one other thing I actually didn't mention was a portion of the bill deals with salary caps, and particularly to protect Minnesota taxpayers from paying out bonuses to executives at MNsure, as was done in the past in a very disappointing fashion. to many people across the state. So there's protections in place for the salaries and administrative costs that will be paid out at MNsure.
How about broadly, why this approach? Many of your activists probably wanted you to blow up MNsure. You're tweaking it. Why?
You know, I think that we are tasked with the responsibility to lead, and you know, I can't say this will be the only MNsure bill that you'll see introduced. I know that I have colleagues and there's people in the Senate that we all have various ideas on how we want to get at this. We're starting at this point because with the responsibility to lead, we recognize the political realities here in St. Paul. To my understanding, the governor and my colleagues in the Senate, in the majority in the Senate, don't necessarily have an interest in blowing up MNsure. And so while many of us would say, you know what, we think that there's a better way to do this, we need to operate within the realities that we're living right now, and that is that MNsure is here for a while, unless overnight the governor changes his mind and realizes that we're on a very fateful path. But at this point, it's what we have. And there's things that we've been talking about for the past 2 years, including on the campaign trail, that are good government things that need to be brought in line for MNsure. And so that is where we're starting with. And we also think that this federal waiver, if it was successful, would be a major win for all Minnesotans and would put us on a much better path to prosperity and healthcare transparency going forward.
Mr. Speaker, of these top 5 priorities.
Which is my favorite? No.
Well, you tell us that, too.
Go ahead.
What are things in here that your caucus absolutely will not change on? You said these bills are going to change. Can you go through some of the things here that you just won't negotiate away?
I'm not sure I know yet. You know, we and I'm very sincere when I say we want to make sure that we end up with the best end product. And I don't know where the best idea is going to come from. Maybe, Don, it's going to come from you. I don't know that. Likely, maybe, right? I don't know. Somebody didn't agree. No, but you know, it might come from our staff. It might come from a member. It might come from a Democrat member. It might come from somebody in one of the departments or the administration. I don't know where it's going to come from. But you know what? It doesn't matter to me whether the idea is a Republican idea or a Democrat idea. What I want to make sure is that we get the best idea that solves the problem in the way that serves Minnesotans the best. So that's what I'm going to look for. And really, I would say, potentially, as we learn more about these problems and what Minnesotans care about, and as we get more feedback from them, you know, I think that these things could change, and we might find a better idea than anything that's here. So that's why I want to be very open and saying this is a starting point for us. But we hope to engage Minnesotans. We believe that Minnesotans deserve a great debate on the issues that they care about, and we hope to engage them and draw the best ideas out of them as well. So.
Question for Representative Kresha or perhaps Representative Davids. How would a pass-through tax credit work for S corporations? Would it be only for S corporations above a certain income level or some other mechanism?
Thank you. As you know, an S corporation is a pass-through. And so what we want to do is income from that subchapter S corporation coming through would get the tax credits. So it doesn't work on Cs, of course, and so we're just focusing this on subchapter S's, not necessarily LLCs at this point. But we want to get some credits through that income coming through the corporation, the S corporation.
And what size of credit are we talking about?
What do you have written?
There's a 10% pass-through.
10% pass-through. Provides a 10% exclusion of active pass-through income through a subchapter S.
You know, we heard from, and we believe this is an important one. This is something that will help Minnesota be more competitive in its tax climate for the people who create jobs in Minnesota, our small businesses. We heard last night at the chamber dinner from a small business owner who said that 92% of Minnesota businesses, because of that subchapter S, pay their taxes through the individual income tax side of the tax code. And we know that in Minnesota, after the Democrats are done with us the last 2 years, that Minnesota now is the 4th highest tax state in the nation. And we know that that hurts job growth and wage growth in Minnesota. And our priority is on Minnesotans. It's on growing jobs, but not just growing jobs, better paying jobs for Minnesotans. And we believe this is a good way to do that.
Do these bills change our ranking?
Say it again.
Do your tax bills, do you tend to change Minnesota's
You know, that's a
ranking?
good question. I don't know. I guess we'd have to look into that. Yeah. And we're going to have more ideas as we move through this as well. But yeah, I agree with the chairman. I think it probably would, but I don't know right off the top of my head.
Are you taking a swing at income taxes, Mr. Chair?
Well, I'll always take a swing at income taxes. I also realize that we have to be able to get done what we can get done. But one thing I would like to mention very briefly is the federal conformity bill we're looking at in committee on Tuesday. And Senator Scoy and I have worked on that in the governor's office, and this has to be on super intensified warp speed because it needs to be done by the 20th. And I think in a bipartisan manner, hopefully we can get that done.